Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. This is exciting. Thanks so much for joining us here. So we have a great topic here, talking about one of the interesting topics today here is about data and security and intersection of both data and security. Um, and we also have experts here. I'll talk about introductions in a minute. Uh, but we're going to cover today, from the discovery to security, the topic really all about how someone will find the right data they need, with the high quality, the required for, data workloads today, the data lakes, data warehouses, data analytics, and the AI workloads, that everyone is deploying, left-handed on every day-to-day basis in multiple clouds. So the title of the webinar is Discovery to Security, Empowering AI with Trusted Data Access. So that's the focus for the topic today. Um, I'll introduce myself. I'm one of the panelists here. Along with me, we have Rohit Gusavi from AMD. Then we also have Michael Mayer from Alation. Uh, so I'll start introduction with them first, and then I'll take introduce myself as well. So Michael, let's start with you. Introduce yourself and a little bit of Alation, um, and then we'll go to Rohit and then come back to me.
Sure. So my name is Michael Meyer. I've been at Elation as a product marketing manager for a little over 2.5 years. Prior to that was actually a customer of Elation, which has really been a nice transition coming to work for them. In terms of myself, I have over 30 years in the data industry, working in roles from BI engineer, data engineer to data architect. So I'm really passionate about being able to talk to folks about subjects such as we have today. So thank you for attending this webinar.
Great, thank you, Michael. Rohit, if you can please introduce yourself and then talk about AMD, some of the challenges that you're dealing with. That'll be great.
Sure. The Rohit Gosavi, I lead the enterprise information management team here at AMD. I do have 20 plus years of data management experience, especially from the angle of enterprise data warehouse. Here at AMD, I've been expanding my responsibilities to manage data platforms such as HANA Cloud, Alation, Snowflake, Power BI, Informatica, TrustLogic. We have many data tools. And along with the application management, my team is also responsible to manage the data sets and reports. And the data security is a key area which my team is heavily focused on, making sure we identify the owners, we identify the approvers of the data. Also, we have a streamlined process to enable the data security. And we'll talk about it more, that how we are using the different tools to streamline the process.
Great. Thank you, Rohit. It's great to have you. Just on myself, I'm Ganesh Kirti, CEO, founder at TrustLogix, and I've been doing security a long time. It's a passion last 20 years. Um, you know, Last 4 years, we've been focusing on data security, data access controls, working with companies like AMD and, large companies, along with, in the financial verticals like investment banks like Jefferies, um, and then a few other healthcare companies. So we partner with large enterprises to address the challenges that they have to deal with on getting the data out to the right people, and partnering with companies like Alation, Michael Mayer and team here, making sure that we get the right architecture, right solutions in place for large enterprises. So we'll talk about that. Having said that, so let's kick it off. Um, Perhaps one of the things we could like, we'll wait for some more time, but then Becky would pose a question later on. Would love to understand on the audience here what type of data tools they might be using on their day-to-day basis. Probably like in few minutes down the time here, we'll try to get that poll. But before that, what I would like to do is, like to just kind of step back and then understand the picture, like what's going on the ground. Enterprises like AMD is, we know that talking to, we as a security solution, we work with large enterprises, as I was saying, and then we hear that the companies have multiple data platforms. They have something for databases already, like Oracle, SQL Server. They have data lakes and they have data warehouses, data analytics now with LLMs. There's a multiple data workloads that they are deploying. They had to put the data out, wherever the data has to be available for the consumption, right? It's just given, and the data sprawl is happening, it's a multi-cloud, um, and that's just what business is demanding, and that the data has to be available. Now, the challenge is from the security perspective, and then also from the business perspective, how can they get access to the data with the right access and with the right data sets? It's really, really challenge. So we'll talk about some of those things, but before we get there, perhaps like I would request like Rohit, like if you can talk about on the day-to-day basis, right, on your side, type of data platforms that you deal with, right? At your company, you probably have a combination of databases, data lakes, and analytic tools like Power BI, Tableau, right? If you can perhaps kind of give us a little bit of a view of what's happening on a day-to-day basis, right? On your side, that'll be great.
Yeah, so as you said, we do have multiple data platforms, HANA Cloud, Snowflake, SQL Server, Oracle, and many data platform. They are enabling very different use cases. Typically we build the data sets on a data platform like Snowflake or SQL Server, and once we enable it, we tested it, the typical way is to have a users added to the user roles added to the databases, and that process to request something and enabling it, it is very much cumbersome, and we are we're partnering with you, enabling the tool TrustLogic's capability to streamline that process. We are seeing the advantage of Alation, using Alation as a data catalog tool, also enabling the tagging on a different data sets, making sure that the data is correctly classified, and that is also helping us to reduce the I would say churn on the data security governance perspective.
Yeah, so you have, it's as I was saying, you have multiple data platforms, and you want to make sure that you're putting the right security in place before you give or share data with your business people or business users. Michael, having you work with large enterprises, right? Like you work with AMDs, like companies. Can you talk about the typical journey, right, that you guys get involved at what stage, for example, and what do you see, right? You know, when they would need tool like, data catalog tools, right, like yourselves. Perhaps if you can, set the stage, right? That life cycle and that journey stage.
Yeah, and customers come from all different, places in terms of their customer journey. But a lot of times, what the first thing is they come to us, with things like what we said. That data is all over the place, and sometimes it's siloed, and it becomes very difficult, to manage. And so, having Alation be able to automatically go out and extract metadata about all these data platforms, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, is that first real step so that people can kind of get a landscape of what they have in terms of their overall data ecosystem. I think then the other thing that's really important as they get started is really to understand in terms of governance. There's today, the things that you want to be able to do is to really be able to classify that data as it's coming into the organization. And we know that there's new data always coming in every day. And so being able to do that kind of sets the stage. And so that whether, you're working with, looking to do things like with data or AI products, you really need to be able to start to build in, that governance and on also the trust and security of the data to make sure it's being used in a compliant manner. So I think those are some of the things that we see. We see a lot of other things, just the sheer growth of customers and trying to understand and have that common data language across the whole organization is very important too.
Yeah. So is there a like the signal that you see or your team see, right? You know, look here, like a three databases or three data sources where it starts getting complicated, right? Or you have 10 different data products, you know, you know, like it's completely goes out of control. And that's where you need to start looking at the governance. Or is it like even you see companies right from early on, right? Um, look, we got to have the right governance, right classification, right cataloging, right? Way early on. Is how what are companies doing today? At what stage do they get involved in general?
And I think one of the key things that when they first start to come in is I always see a paradigm of like where are your consumers of that data? Where are they most coming through? And you think, oh, it's probably maybe one main reporting tool like a Power BI, but many organizations have, of course, many different ones. And so as they start to bring that information, that metadata in, it's important also in terms of not only, data inside a databases, but also to get that, the governance around those reports. And so we see a lot of people that spend a lot of time on that because they also want to know, in terms too of their data consumers, need to be able to know where did that data come from. How I want to be able to see the lineage of that data so I can trace back. And so if I have a metric that I'm not sure about that it doesn't look necessarily correct, I want to be
Mm.
able to easily trace that back. And so we see that's the journey, but that's like this, the starting point. But yes, large organizations have data, like you said, multi-cloud, they're using the Snowflakes and the Databricks. I mean, it's just all over the board as to what different organizations are doing. And so the key definitely is having strong automation to make sure that you are classifying this data and properly securing it. So I think that's what we see with many of our customers today.
So there is a particular trigger points there when they get into that, like that's when they start looking at the cataloging and classification, type of tools. Yeah, it
Yeah,
makes sense.
definitely.
Look, I think just from our perspective, on the trust logic side and on the purely on the security side, we do hear, once the data gets into multiple data platforms, the complexity goes very high, and then obviously security perspective, they would need to identify what type of data it is, and is there a PII, and is there a compliance, privacy is important, but also from the risk perspective, is there a business sensitive data that's sitting in there, and is that properly protected, right? So that's typically the type of questions people start thinking about,
Mhm.
and then we get involved at the time. Um, and then also, it's really difficult if the journey is much further, they already have 5, 6 different data platforms. They start thinking about at that point, it's very difficult at that point because now you have to backtrack. But ideally, in a perfect situation, just in my mind personally, I think that it would be best if company starts thinking way early on, structuring this, putting the right metadata, right classification in place that helps them methodically scale. Um, that environment. So now, obviously, like, TestLogic's perspective, we see customers coming to us at the middle of their journey or early point of journey, or when they're migrating data into the cloud, there are different entry points. We see that. But across all these areas, it would be best if they already have some type of classification done, or if they have some metadata in place that allows us to tag them and secure them properly and then give them visibility. So that's typically how, we think we partner with Alation and kind of bring that solution together. Now coming back to, Rohit, at your side, right? When did you guys start thinking about putting the, cataloging and metadata, right, around the data sets? Is there a particular trigger point that you had run into that's when you started out, or you guys started from way, way early on, projecting that you would run into issues in the future?
I would say we started early on. We did not had a, I would say, tool in place even before we had a data cataloging tool. Uh, the teams were managing catalog offline, and it wasn't well managed. And this is where we started enabling the more automation and tools to optimize the workload. But we've been looking at this problem for quite a long time. Um,
Okay. So you had, I mean, looks like you started on early on, like you had some trigger, siloed way of things were happening, and then
that's correct.
you identified, that there was a need for scale. And I think your company probably, like, you guys deal with hundreds and hundreds of data sets, right? Hundreds of databases across multiple platforms. And it's definitely going to be doing a siloed basis, individual, right? Like, it's probably not going to scale. It's just a chaotic,
That's correct.
it's a completely fragmented story. Um, and then you have different people dealing with different things, right? Um, within the data teams and security teams, and within the data team itself, you have governance, perhaps, data engineers, data analysts, data stewards. I would like to spend a few minutes perhaps on like these personas, the people we see in this ecosystem. Um, so, Rohit, maybe like if you can just give us a little bit of, from AMD perspective, right? Do you have a governance team, and then you have, the data people that work with the governance team, and then you have security people that work with your team? You know, it's good to like get your, what happens on the day to day on the ground at your company.
Yeah, so we are formalizing that team structure. I would say that the structure is a little informal, but we do have a more like a master data management team who is responsible for corporate data management. We do have a separate security team who is focused on more like a ERP data security as well as the data warehouse data security. And we do interact with the different teams a lot because we need to get approvals from data set owners. And to your point, we do have a different personas within the business teams or our end users who are um, data analysts or data stewards. Yeah.
Okay. And is there a process they coordinate when it comes down to, like, for example, tool like Alation, right? When it's deployed, is there a particular owner that is responsible for cataloging and classifying it and tagging it?
That, that's correct. And yeah, that's a good question. We are asking the data set owner to catalog the data and making sure the definitions are up to date. Um, it's very difficult for a central team to catalog, I would say, every data set available across the company. And this is a new process we are coming up in last 2 3 years and making sure as we onboard new data set in a new data platform, we identify the data set owner and have them catalog the data in the data catalog tool.
Okay. And then is every data owner is responsible for doing that, and then
That's
making sure
correct.
that the right classification is done. Um, and then is there a validation that happened? Is there someone approves it, or is there security people look at it from the compliance or any usage perspective of that metadata from the governance
Yeah,
perspective?
depending on use cases and depending on the data set, we do have the different teams involved.
Got it. Okay. So Michael, any add-on into that, like is like from Alation perspective, right? I'm assuming you work with different stakeholders, right? When you deploy the solution.
Yeah, I mean, from all the different various points of the life cycle, the data that we do work with them, we see all the various personas in there. And I think the key is like we're talking about is, having stewards that are doing some of the creation and, depending upon your governance structure of your organization on how they're actually, trying to classify and work with the data. But I think the thing that's been very interesting for us to see is whether companies with Alation, you can actually what AMD is doing, that you can tag the data or you can create custom metadata to be able to see this, and so it's making it very then from a governance perspective, what we try to do, and also we try to do the automation of the classification and policy assignment. But there are organizations that still want to verify. And so we have like a stewardship workbench where stewards can go in and then actually go in and say this was detected as potential PII, and then they can verify it as it is or isn't. And so that starts to really then help the consumers so that when they go out and actually working with that data through our active data governance, they'll be shown that, hey, this particular data is covered by our PII policy as an example. And so what that allows them to do is it gives them the time to be able to actually see that, yes, our organization has governance in place. If they have questions about it, they can ask out to the committee or whoever's in charge. But it gives them that sense that they know that they have to use that data in a compliant means. But to me, then it still makes it a little bit, for certain users, that maybe make you a little bit nervous. Well, when you have a solution where, like with Trust Logic, where then you guys are providing those physical controls for data access, data masking policies, you know that you feel much more confident and then having that end-to-end solution in terms of compliant data use. So I think it's really having people have that again that sense that they are working with good trusted data and they're using it in the right way, and that's what people are coming to us and saying it's more and more important.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's, as you said, that writing, having some validation, right? That, this data is tracked correctly and right classification is in place, right? That does give the confidence to compliance people and, security folks like CISO organization, plus the business people. Then that's where we come in as a Trust Logic solution, as an access control and security posture management solution. We can now take that information, metadata, and then now we can make that, you know, uh, security visibility, right? Look, here is how people using this data. Here is now you can apply access controls on these data sets, that this PI data can only be accessed by these sets of business people for these purposes, with these conditions, right? So we can write those access control policies, and then having that visibility into compliance and security folks, right? That look, these are the policies that we had put in the Alation like tool from the governance policy perspective. Now we also see the evidence from TrustLogix that these are the policies that are implemented and executed on a day-to-day basis, right? So that evidence is now very clear from audit perspective and compliance perspective. That's kind of how we complement Alation solution by leveraging the metadata and tags that was done by the data stewards and data governance people. Now, coming back, you know, just continuing on that thought, right? Like once we implement this, uh, there's typically every company is different, and it's evolving the way we see it. Now, the CISO, let's just spend like a few minutes on the CISO organization, right? The chief security officers, now who are primarily not day-to-day basis involved with the data, or they don't own the data, but they're accountable from keeping the data protected inside the company, right? And that's their role. And we see them increasingly getting involved with the data teams, with the business teams recently. And then we also know that there is a Snowflake data breach that happened, 7, 8 months ago. There's a lot more scrutiny happening on these cloud data platforms. So Rohit, from your perspective, right, how is your businesses collaborate with the CISO organization? For example, do you guys work with them on a day-to-day basis, or do they just come and ask you for certain things? What's that interaction? What's that collaboration looks like?
I would say we don't interact with them on day-to-day basis, but we do interact with them a lot, especially when we onboard a new tool or when we are onboarding a new tool with the new data connectivity. We do make sure the CISO team is aligned and approve our approach. Also, we do get a lot of questions from CISO org that who has access to what data set and is it compliant, just like you were mentioning earlier. And we do provide them the proofs that this data set is approved by this data set owner. But we do see those conversations a lot, that they do a scan of data set and the and the users using those data sets.
So is it just like they're asking for proof, or do they also give you any like the mandates, like the policy rules? Look, with the company, here is a policies that everyone must comply with. Is there such
Yeah,
mandate comes to you?
they do mandate as well, and we also get the I would say feedback from the dataset owners. Typically, they are the owners, and they want to make sure that certain number of users or certain or specific users do have access, and it's not open up to all users. So it's a
Hmm.
combination of the security team, CISO team, as well as the dataset owner who wants to make sure that we are giving the right access.
Yeah. And I would also assume that it's good that you need to show them the evidence, right? And then you need some tool. And if you don't have a tool like, I know you are using TrustLogix today, but typically, if you have to show that as an ongoing basis, you need to be able to put together some audit reporting and some policies. So hopefully, it's experience for you is you kind of tell them, look, here is a tool I'm using, go use the tool, and then you will get the evidence. Or do you have to, like, what is that experience like? Do they have access to the same tool that you're using for access controls? Or
Yeah, yeah. So I think we are getting there. Whenever the request comes in, we need to make sure uh, the data set and the associated users are scraped out of different tools, different data platforms, and we need to put together that combined report from this data platform, X number of users. This from Y data platform, we have another set of users. Um, right now, it is a painful effort to do that, but uh, our goal is we use Trust Logic to enable the data security across data platforms. And once we do that, then our effort would be much simple to enable that across data set, across data platform report together.
and hopefully this will also helps your CISO groups, right, to your security groups to get visibility into across data platforms from one central place.
That's correct.
Here are the policies, here are the users that are using our users that still have access, but they should not have access to the data, right? It kind of makes that
Yes.
visibility. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. The the they have the visibility, but the way they get to that data visibilities is I would say semi-automated exports. But once we enable the trust logic, our expectation is many of these manual um, data crunching will be automated.
Yeah. Yeah, so and that's really the hope also. I think without automation, it's just not going to scale, right? Like the way the data is used today, is just increasing, and it's growing much faster with AI deployments coming in. LLMs are getting trained, and all of them need the business data, right? We are talking about real business sensitive data, and businesses have to move fast, and it cannot be manual. It has to be automated in some fashion. So, so coming on that, Michael, on the from the trusted data perspective, right? We talked about, metadata tagging and, classifying the data and then securing the data and then having security people get visibility into that, right? Um, so now, if you look at the trusted data perspective, right? Can you talk about the use cases that you see, right? Like with your customers, with the AI also, right? Like, with OpenAI and LLMs getting you know, coming into the production now. Just started seeing that. Maybe give like one or two examples, right? Like how your customers are deploying the solution.
Yeah, I think a lot of it starts, at the first point, which we talked about a little bit before. It's at discovery. Being able to have these things available. We had one of our largest customers. a digital services company. And what they were able to do is they were able to use Alation to help really bring out a lot of the information that was hidden in silos, and they were able to catalog 900 new machine learning features. And so that made them be able to really be able to up their level in terms of being able to start to do that those kind of things, the AI and ML world. But I think, the things that we see is from that trust perspective too goes a lot with, the quality of the data and how important that is. And I think, as Rohit had said, we see a lot more people talking about master data management because you really have to have your hands around that data and understand at its point of consumption, its quality, whether it's for a data product or an AI product. But I think the last thing that's been a new emphasis too is the ability really to extend information, the metadata. You need to be able to, as organizations, inside of like a catalog, is to be able to create whatever custom attributes you need. And those attributes are key because these new models and these new learnings through the LLMs need to have that context of what that data is about. And so the more context that they can get, the more accuracy can be built into it. And so, it's been over the years, you always thought about, it's always about the data. It's nowadays it's just as much about the metadata too that's driving, like you said, driving these for AI, driving for scale. You have to be able to have good, accurate metadata in order to drive business processes at scale.
Yeah, no, I think it's the point you just talked about, right, is having that trusted data, right, with the right classification done, and then someone has validated the data set, right, is really important for LLM trainings, for AI applications. With the wrong data, things can go wrong, right? Like, it could become, impacts the business. And um, so I think that's where I think Alation Lex platforms, right, is really key to make sure that the data gets properly, validated, right, from the quality and sensitiveness perspective. Um, and then once it's there, I think there is the once the data is high quality, it's validated, and then there is now the step of ensuring that LLMs don't get the sensitive data into them, right? Because there has to be a way, especially on the AI side, you want to make sure that there's no PI data gets into the LLM training, because then the data, it's too late already.
Right.
By the models are trained and then deployed, and that's typically where TrustLogix kind of gets plugged in and make sure that if the data is used for training purposes or for LLM deployment purposes, right, only the right AI applications have access to the right data there, and then also the sensitive data is not getting used in the training purposes. So, TrustLogix keeps an eye on that and then alerts on any such unexpected data consumption into these models. And that's typically where we kind of take the Alation integration, right? Effectively, makes it really work for customers. Now they can confidently train, use the data and then train and then deploy those applications at scale, right? And that's typically how I think, combination of Alation and TrustLogix can provide effective solution by leveraging the data sets. Um, Now, on a day-to-day basis, right? Let's just kind of look at the operational side of things now. On a day-to-day basis, Rohit, for example, at your company, right? I had to imagine that, the different business teams that you're supporting as a central data team, right? And there are different stakeholders, different data sets, that are used for different purposes. And on a day-to-day basis, there is a constant request coming in for data, right? And for building new data sets, for giving access to the right people, sharing data with the right partners and right internal stakeholders. You know, can you just paint a, what happens, day-to-day basis, right? Like, at scale, within your company, who gets involved, who is asking for the data, and then how do they get approved, right, for the certain data access. Um, so, you're good to like kind of get that operational side of the view.
Sure. So typically, whenever someone needs a data set access, they create a request in the workflow tool. It may be ServiceNow, or it may be a Charm, or it may be a different tool. But typically, they create a request and it gets routed to the dataset owner. Once they approve it, then it gets routed to a data steward who is responsible to enable the dataset access. And this is a typical workflow, but that's how we kind of enable that access based on the approval from the dataset owner.
And would they use, is there intersection with Alation and TrustLogix like tool during that process, when the requests are, and then there are different people gets involved for approvals?
Yeah, it really depends on the data set, but if we have the tag-based data policy enabled, then definitely Alation would be involved. But for example, if we are enabling a new data set and that tag is not available, then we'll work with the data steward to enable the tag. But if it is already available, then it's just the data steward who will enable the role to the user using TrustLogix.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So it depends on the case, sometimes, they may have to create a policy using the tags. In that case, they have to make sure that the right tags are created at Alation side, and then the tag gets pushed into TrustLogix, and then, the security policies can be created there at that point. Okay. And I would assume that this has to be somewhat secured process, because we don't want someone to be tagging something that's inappropriate, um, or it's incorrect, or even sometimes insider malicious type of activities, right? We don't want them to unnecessarily, give access to, incorrect, people, right, with the inappropriate tags. So there has to be some security
That's
control
correct.
in place as
It
well.
does go through we go through the vetting process, making sure that whatever tags are enabled are accurate and appropriate, and the dataset owner approves those tags.
Yeah. Yeah. Now,
I'm not sure if
I know. I think
we have a
Ganesh might have
freeze here.
frozen.
Oh, he's coming back.
There it is.
okay. I don't know if I lost you, Michael. Did we lose you, Michael, or did you?
We lost you, is what we thought.
Oh, sorry about that. So what I was saying was, as Rohit was saying, the tags are done in the Alation as a source of truth, and then there has to be some security in place, right? So that not incorrect tags are created and people are not misusing that. Is from the Alation perspective, from your perspective, right? Is there a baseline that you would consider? Okay, this is all good. This is the baseline, right? Now we can start using this data set. Is there a process in which your customers could say that, yep, this is a version 1, and then that's what everyone should go off for production?
And there's a lot of different scenarios that play into this. And I think from the discussion before, I think the best thing, is being able for organizations, however if they work at the domain level or if they're working at different things, we can set up those workflows so that people can go through the right approval processes. And so we do have our workflows for those. So I think that's the first step if they need to be able to implement them. Whether something for that, or we have the same thing when it comes to our documents and also through our terms and business glossaries. Now, what we see with a lot of companies, though, is as they work towards a level of themselves, they kind of define what that level of curation and enough of the attributes on those data assets to make sure that it's is the ones that should be utilized. So I mean, you hear a lot of times, and this is more from actually like that trusted data set. They'll actually go through a series of their own things and then actually mark the data set as being trusted. Kind of like it's where that would be the primary asset. We've also seen places where they have like this is your primary use, and there's some of the other ones in terms of like like a gold, silver, bronze type of thing. So all kinds of different ways. But I think to me where probably the industry's going a little bit is really to understand, yeah, it's how can you as an organization define more or less like a scorecard of what looks good so that you can
Mm.
actually do get that full view and understanding and trust of the products that you're working with, data products, AI products.
Yeah, I would imagine that's the iterative process also. I was just kind of trying to understand, is there the governance guidelines perspective, right? Where look, this is typically data stewards and security and compliance people look at
Mhm.
it. And then once that round one is done, right, then that should be considered as like the baseline. And then it's an iterative process after that, right? I was just trying to see if there's any best practice that's out there,
Right. And we actually have a methodology that a lot of our customers go through it, just what you just said. It's about how to get started, how to have the right people involved, how to get those policies out there. And then once you actually have trusted data, how are you letting people know that it's there? So that constant being able to continually improve upon how you're delivering data to the consumers inside of your organization. And I think that's critical because if you start off in a governance program and think you're going to do everything in one shot, you're setting yourself up for failure. You really need to have more of that iterative to start showing value sooner and then continue to build upon the successes and also the learnings where you can improve things. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've been amazed at talking to our customers and how they go through that process in order to get up and running and really to sustain a good governance effort. It's a lot of work, and so they having some process to follow makes it much easier.
yeah. We've seen with some, large healthcare enterprises specifically that, they've got big, large number of business groups and, many, many data sets. And they have these tools like Alation and TrustLogix in addition to other tools. The challenge for them is, how you can, you know, align the process, right? How you can get people to collaborate. At what stage do they need to collaborate, right? Is definitely a challenge, I think. Having a defined process, within the company, right? Look, here is metadata owner, here is the data steward, this is what he's going to do, and then or he or she is going to do, and then this is documented, and then there is a policy documented, and then that is reviewed and approved by some privacy or compliance person, right? And then there is a policy owner or policy implementation owner from the security perspective, go to a tool like TrustLogix and then take the documented policy and then implements it, right?
Right.
Um, and then the data consumers now get access to data, right? Without having to wait for longer cycles. It's at the end of the day, that's really the goal, right? Like getting the business people the data that they need, with at the right time with the right security already built in, right? That's really the goal. If you don't have this process well defined, it's just going to be a chaotic, who's doing what, and the tools also have to work together in that integrated fashion, right? The tools cannot be siloed, right? That's really where the Snowflake and Databricks and TrustLogix integration with Alation, all of them integrated together, right?
Yeah.
That allows customers to smoothly coordinate and collaborate.
Yeah. And if you think about kind of where we're at today, from a governance perspective, having that kind of central core of setting those policies, but in the world of data products, you might have multiple distributed teams that need to adhere to that and understand those. But it's making it, like you said, as automated as possible and understandable so that you can ensure that no matter who's building these products, that they're going to be secured, trusted products in the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think Rohit, assuming that the tools can integrated and then gets deployed at companies like you, right? Is it'll be, I know you said it's starting the process at AMD. You guys are trying to get to the structured, way to scale, right? Automate these things, right? Over the time period, it's going to happen over the time period. I was curious to know if there are any ways we can measure, right? Within the company, here is the step one, that's a success criteria, and then here is like incremental steps, right? Um, or both of you, right? Like Michael and Rohit, right? Like, are there any ways companies can measure this, right? This metadata is helping us achieve this, and that's the measure for them, right? Here is the outcome we are looking for with that. Here is the trust logics, the security policies helping us achieve XYZ, right? Um, I'll just keep it open. I mean, both of you can comment, but just interested in like knowing what measures can we put in place, companies.
Yeah, so I don't know, Rohit, if you have anything that you guys are doing today in terms of this area. I I think the future is on a lot of this is being able to really be able to configure and attribute value and being able to set what that value measure is. So we do some things at a very broad perspective with our data culture value index, and we're looking to extend that and even broaden that into the future. But yeah, I'm always curious, and that's one of the topics that comes up in a lot of like our user group meetings and stuff is the ability to attribute value to the things that you're doing, with your data in the catalog.
Yeah, and one way I can see is we can look at the number of data sets available in a data platform and measure um, every quarter that how many of them are cataloged and have tags associated and metadata associated with it. Um, for every company, it's a different, I would say, speed to get to the endpoint, but this is a one way I can see Ganesh as a way to measure the progress.
Basically, like, how many data sets are getting automated, tagged, getting visibility into that, right? So that there's a clear visibility into any risk associated with any of this data, and then
Okay.
any compliance associated issues with that.
Mm-hmm.
The governance perspective, you know, your data leaders have a confidence within the business how data is used. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, it's from the risk perspective, and then it's like we talked about earlier, it's about being able to deliver sooner so people get access to that data sooner, can start making decisions with it sooner. So there's, the whole usage
Mm.
metrics, two sides that can feed into the whole value equation. So yeah, it's really it's an interesting an area. I think that a lot of, like I say, a lot of companies have a lot of different ways that they attribute value to their data, and I think it's just going to continue to be a growing area where we're going to see more and more emphasis put on that.
awesome. I know we are at the 6-7 minutes time period, tag here. At any questions, for folks on the call, feel free to post questions. Um, so I want to come back. So we talked about the initial challenges, data sprawl, multiple data platforms. It's a pretty standard. Every company is dealing with that. We talked about structuring that with the right metadata, right catalog, and then having that information used in the security solutions like TrustLogix to secure that, and then having that evidence to the security folks, right?
Mm.
That this data is protected, and then there is evidence that the right policies are executed, and doing that at a scale that allows companies like AMD to continue to innovate and deploy data lakes, data warehouses, and AI solutions once we have this infrastructure in place. And integration trust logics and relation tools enabling is that automation that is required by these companies to scale. And then also allowing business teams to consume the data, gain insights much faster in a more confident and secure fashion. So that's really what we talked about. Um, you know, Within the few minutes we have, it'll be great, if you can get some guidance, if you guys can perhaps, all three of us, right, we can like, what we have seen so far with our projects, right? It'll be good to give guidance. So Michael, if you have any, if you had to suggest to companies out there, right? it'll be great to, hear from you. What would you suggest, like from here, right? What would companies can do, take
Yeah,
away from
I
here?
think one of the key things when you're starting is make sure that you're defining and automating your data classification policies as soon as possible because I think it's so critical. And as you'd said earlier, a lot of times it's a perfect time if you're doing like a cloud migration to, a Databricks, Snowflake, or whatever, to really be considering that and making that top priority. But I think that's one important thing. And then I think the other thing is really to show the data consumers inside of your organization how important governance is and why those policies exist. And so I think the thing that like having a platform like Alation really has that active data governance. So it shows them before they're using it to really teach them how to use data compliantly. But then it's like when you take that to the next level and have it integrated with someone like with Trust Logic, now they don't have to, like we said before, they don't have to fear because they know that also any of that sensitive data, any of the true access controls is implemented physically through Trust Logic. And so I think it's just these are the things that as you move forward, I if I was the one responsible for the data, I would feel much more confident and be able to sleep at night knowing that the data is being taken care of.
Yeah, makes sense. Really good. Rohit, from your perspective and guidance?
Yeah, yeah, I do echo with Michael. I think he summarized it very well. Everything starts with the data discovery and using the tool like Alation, teams can make sure the data is cataloged and it has the correct tags, and then the data security would follow it after that.
Awesome. Yeah, look, I think, I agree, Michael and Rohit, having the right um, cataloging classification is important, especially at scale, right? The way the data is used. It's important, equally important that once we have that, you know, get the right protection in place with the right architecture without creating a friction for business users, having the right architecture to secure the data, leveraging the metadata and the metadata that's associated, and then giving the right people access. Not only that, the company should keep an eye on that. Once they give that access, it's not just a one-time thing, it's an ongoing thing in its radio, right? They have to look at it. Are these still the right people accessing the data? Are they still have, privileged and entitled to be in that project and have access to the data? If not, they have to go clean it up. So there has to be a continuous, monitoring and visibility into, auditability of who's accessing the data. And then also from the risk perspective, are they sharing data with anyone else that they're not supposed to? Because the tools are so easy now with Snowflake and Databricks and AWS, people can run simple SQL command and then, copy data and then share data, right? So which could bring in risk to the businesses. So keeping an eye on those type of activities and then helping security and business people to get visibility into any such unexpected data usage, unexpected data sharing, and compliance violations, right? And helping them with that visibility and then giving them recommendations to immediately remediate them. So, summarize this, having the right data metadata is important, and then also having that combined with the right security and right security posture management with access control is also important. If they can get a solution that works together and then gives them in a more scalable architecture, that's really what they should be looking for, I believe. For enterprises. So with that said, I'll stop here. If any questions, we'll take it. Um, you know, Thank you so much. Otherwise, Becky, if you have anything, let us know. Otherwise, we can start wrapping it up.
No, I think we're ready to wrap this up.
Okay. All right. If no questions here, folks, feel free to, send us any questions. Here are the links. It's available. You have all of our contacts. Feel free to reach us. Um, and then if you want to see a demo of what we talked about with AMD and Alation and Trust integration, obviously we won't talk about AMD in our demos, but we can talk about some of the use cases. And then, if you want to see a demo, feel free to connect with us as well. With that said, Rohit, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for taking time from your busy schedule. Michael, really appreciate your partnership. We've been working great with Alation, so look forward to continue to build that partnership. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.